Hi, how's it going? So this is a book written by Daniel Goleman, and it's called Emotional Intelligence. And this book is very important for anybody who is into business, anyone who's into finance, and anyone who's into the business of life. Whether you are an entrepreneur or not, you need to have emotional intelligence in order to handle anything that life throws at you. This is one of the most important books, and it addresses a lot of issues that are aimed at family life, business life, social life, the economy, and everything. And it's an interesting book because when I read it, I wasn't prepared for the depth that is in this book. So it actually took me a long time to go through it. As you can see, it's pretty thick. I think there are about over 300 pages in this book, and the way that it's so detailed and so dense, there's a lot to go through it. So giving you a summary or some quick points on this will not do it justice. This is a book that is written about people's emotional intelligence, and this concept of the emotional intelligence is in direct contrast with what we call IQ. So IQ is just about intellectual intelligence, just about being smart in your head, and this is about being smart in your heart. And this is actually sometimes more important than being smart in your head. When you have emotional intelligence, it means that you have a heart that is filled with knowledge. So this is true wisdom. So when you're able to use your heart, then you're able to access parts of your mind that most people are not able to access. So basically, the mind has three different parts. Your mind is comprised of your head, which has your brain. It's comprised of your heart, which is actually the strongest part of your entire organism. The heart is the first organism that starts life, so everything emanates from your heart. And then the third part of your mind is your stomach. This is how you get a gut feeling and all of those things. And if you see how the intestines are lined up, they actually look like a brain. So the heart is the central organism that actually thinks, that talks, and is actually faster than your brain. So emotional intelligence is talking about how your heart has quicker and faster responses than your brain. So this is from an evolutionary standpoint as well as from any other standpoint that you actually ascribe to. So from the evolutionary standpoint, the emotional intelligence refers to when your heart is able to make a decision that is geared towards your own survival. So for example, if you hear sticks crackling in the bush, your heart is going to be geared to this emotional intelligence, and it's going to be able to pick up what is happening in the bush and related to what you should actually do. So this is linked to your spinal column, which is linked to your heart. So your whole system, your endocrine system, your nervous system, your skeletal system is all linked to your heart and linked to your brain, which is your mind. So when we look at it from another point of view, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So this is from a biblical standpoint, and in Proverbs it says that guard your heart with all diligence, and because this is where all of the issues of life spring from. So that's a bit paraphrasing, I think. But everything that you do comes from your heart, and it is executed by your heart. So this is very important, and this book is centrally hinged on this, that you have to use your heart and you have to be able to communicate with your heart. So this is the whole essence of what we call empathy. So when we look at the life of Jesus, what he did that was revolutionary was that he was very empathetic. Like, he used to see lepers, he used to see people who were turned sinners, and he felt this much empathy, this much emotional intelligence. And this is what made him the greatest leader who ever lived, because of that empathy, because he was able to access parts of his heart that people were not able to access. So emotional intelligence actually goes further than just using your heart. So in this book, he actually speaks about how you use certain thought patterns. So this was something that really got me interested in it, because he was talking about how a person has certain patterns So these patterns are the habits in your emotions that elicit a certain response. So you have to create new patterns or new habits in order to get a new result, if that's what you want. So for you to get a new pattern, a new thinking pattern, and a new habit, it means that you have to actually know exactly what you are actually doing. So you need to be self-aware to know that, all right, this leads to that and that leads to this. So there's a causality in emotions that you can actually be in control of. So this is also affected by your mood, your temperament, your feelings, which ultimately lead to your emotions. So emotion is just energy in motion. So your emotions are your energy that are in motion. So when you're able to create patterns or habits that you decide, then you'll be able to decide your emotions. You'll be able to decide the energy you decide to put in motion. So emotions are just that energy in motion. So this is very important when you do any type of business and any type of venture. So particularly when we talk about trading and investing. When you are in an investment, when you're in a trade, you have to be in charge of your emotions, because this is half of everything that you're going to be able to do. So if you're not able to control your emotions, you're not able to control your finances. So emotional intelligence is directly linked to financial intelligence. And this is a fact, because your emotions, your energy in motion will determine how you react towards a loss, how you react towards failure, how you react towards success. So anyone who is successful is actually accessing emotional intelligence. And this is the way that people are able to get people in a group involved in a certain action to get a certain result. You do that through emotional intelligence. You do that through your heart. You do that through your mind. So your mind is an integration of all of these senses. So for example, your actual body is a mind. So your entire body is a mind. So this is how, like, you get a gut feeling. When you eat food, it actually feeds your entire body. So your stomach is that mind. So when you eat food, you're feeding your mind. You're feeding your mind. So everything is your mind. So for example, if you go into a room and then you get this feeling, or your hairs, like you just freeze, your bones chill, and you feel like your hair has been raised and stuff like that. This happens as an emotional response in your mind, because your entire body is a brain. So this skin is actually called a membrane. So this is a memory brain, membrane. So everything, just like as above, so below. So even inside you have these cells that have a membrane, and these cells think to let in something or let out something. So that is the membrane. It actually thinks. It's the members brain or the memory brain, and it lets things in and out because it's actually a brain. The same as your skin. It lets things inside and lets things outside, and all of these windows in your soul. So your whole body is a membrane. It's a memory brain. It's your members brain. So everything will relate to your emotions, and this is how it happens as intellect. So defining intellect, in my opinion, is very difficult, but I do believe that intellect means that you're able to access your knowledge at will. Everyone has eternal knowledge, because your DNA actually comes through someone else, and DNA is just genetic information. So this information can be accessed through your mind, through your brain, through your membranes. So when you're intelligent, it means that you're able to access parts of your DNA, which just means you're able to access information, which is just everywhere. So your body actually has information. It actually has a brain. So this is why a person could actually look like someone who lived 50 years before. You could actually look like your great-great-great-grandma, and you've never met her, but your information is that. So you come in that formation through information. So you actually look like her because you have that membrane, that memory brain, and that is what the body ends up taking. So sometimes you see that people fall into these cycles that have happened through genetics, that have happened through inheritance, that has happened through heredity. So you have to be aware of this, and engage your emotional intellect to know that some of the things that you go through are actually a result of things that have happened in your past. It could also be environmental issues. It could also be just emotional issues. It could be social issues. But all of that can be accessed and can be treated through your understanding of emotional intelligence. So this book is really, really, really potent, and everything in it is really congruent, and it really fits into some of the things that you might be battling with. And it could even be smoking addiction. It could be losing money, not being able to budget. So emotional intelligence is very important. Even making friends, keeping a spouse, all of these things are linked to emotional intelligence. So I can't really pin it down to anything, but I do believe that it's very important in terms of your finances, because once you're able to free yourself financially, then you're able to do whatever you want to do. If you don't have the money to go to the doctor, you're going to live in pain, right? If you don't have the money to pay your rent, you're going to live in stress. So that type of stress, that type of pain, it's all emotional intelligence. For example, in this book, he speaks about stress being an element or an energy that makes people stupid. So a person who is in a stressful environment actually becomes is actually mentally impaired because of that stress. So you could see that someone is in a stressful situation and they could get out of this situation through very simple and easy steps, but because of the stress, which is because they're being stretched, which is what stress is. To stress something is to pull it. So because they're being stretched or stressed, they're not able to think in the correct way, and they won't be able to actually escape a stressful situation in a very easy way, because stress makes people stupid, according to this book. And I do believe that is actually true, that when people are in a stressful environment, they end up thinking in a very different way. So you might be stressed about your finances, and this might impair your judgment, and you might have this emotional reaction that leads you to be more scared to make investments, more scared to take a risk, and all of those things, even if the risks are very, very simple and easy. And you might be a person who gets money and just ends up spending the money as soon as you get it. You can't keep money, and this is emotional intelligence. So this emotional intelligence is more important than intellect, than just brain intelligence. So it's heart, H-E-A-D, or heart, H-E-A-R-T. So it's either the head or the heart, and this is very important. So you're either going to be feeling or you're going to be thinking. But what you should be able to do is to rationalize. To rationalize is to have a ratio, which means that you ration. So it means that you have to balance both of these out. So you have to be logical. At the same time, you also have to be rational. So all of these are combined in what we call emotional intelligence. So this is something that is really, really important for anybody to understand, especially people who are into finance, business, investing, entrepreneurship, and all of that. If you have a family, you need emotional intelligence. If you have a company, you need emotional intelligence. If you don't, you still need it. So this is something that's extremely important, and everyone who's ever created an empire, a business, money, wealth has used emotional intelligence in one way or another. So this is also about neurochemistry, how the brain is actually comprised of different brains. So our brain has a brainstem, which is the reptilian brain, and then we have the limbic system, which is the animal brain, and then we have the cerebral cortex, which is the human brain. So our one brain is actually three brains, maybe even more brains. So how well your emotions are adjusted determines which brain you're actually using. So some people are using the reptilian brain, which is the base, the stem, the initial part of the brain, and this reptilian brain leads people to just look out for themselves. This is how a scorpion stings itself to death for the pleasure of just being a scorpion and just for the pleasure of stinging. And then you have the limbic brain. This is when people don't have the resources and they start behaving like animals. And you can actually see the limbic brain in action through posture. which is disposition. So you could also look at the video that is what is your investment personality, and I go into temperaments a little bit, and in that we're just talking about temperaments. But in emotional intelligence, we're talking about mood, we're talking about temper, we're talking about feelings, we're talking about energy and motion, which is emotion. And all of those combined are what you will actually call intelligence or intellect, which is greater than book knowledge. So reading this book will give you knowledge, will give you information, but for you to actually gain what we call emotional intelligence, you just have to practice it, and you have to know the patterns and the habits that get you in a negative loop. So it's all about the feedback that you end up getting. So you have to be able to be in an emotional state that allows you to get the best results. So this means that you're supposed to know that you always have these patterns. So you're always going to choose the pattern that you have, knowingly or not knowingly. So make the conscious decision to choose a pattern that serves your best interests, which means that you have to choose the patterns that give you better emotions, like faithfulness, like optimism, like hopefulness, all of those things. That is a pattern of thought. But if you find yourself constantly in doubt, hesitation, and fear, and all of that, it means that you are choosing a pattern that leads you to failure. So what you should do is just to replace the pattern and get the right emotional intelligence. So I hope that this helps you in everything that you do. This is emotional intelligence, and thank you so much. I will see you in the next video.